A's Cast Live continues from the town. Here's Chris Townsend.
Well, Melissa joins us from The Athletic as she's put out a bunch of articles lately as she's getting fired up, ready to go for the season. Do we have her? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm ready to go. You know, like this is the time for me. You know, we start getting ready for spring training. Normally it's like, you know, I was down at the AT&T yesterday at Pebble Beach. I'll be there on Sunday. Then after that, it's like, it's go time for baseball. So I asked Eno Saris this, and I want to ask you, like, give me three things that you look at when you look at a franchise, whether it's the A's or anybody else, heading into a season. What are the three things you look at to say this is going to be a good team, and these are the three things they'll tell you why?
Yeah, I mean, I think past performance, is often the first thing you look at, right? So you're going to look at what somebody's coming in, having done the year before, how healthy they finished off the season before. Then you kind of look at the strength of the young players that are coming up and what the depth chart looks like. If you do have an injury, do you have guys behind that person that can kind of step in and do that? And then you kind of look at what's around them too. So is it a division that looks winnable, or is it a division that's stacked with like the best teams in the league, and you're going to kind of be butting your head up against that the entire year? So I think those are kind of the three main things. There's a million sub factors that would go into each and every one of those.
I like it.
But
yeah,
but I think that's what I would look at.
Yeah, Eno mentioned depth too, and that's why I like asking all of you guys who cover the game what you think, because depth of your 40-man roster is definitely big. I'm not so some of your, we love Eno. He's our national baseball columnist who comes on, obviously, your colleague at The Athletic. Some of your colleagues, though, whoa, Jim Bowden coming in hot. With the A's being 30th, we're ranked 30th. Well, there's no way we're the worst team in baseball.
Yeah, I wouldn't even begin to be able to rank every single team. I think after you get past the first 4 or 5, it's kind of a crapshoot what comes after that. But I think this will be a better team than last year. I don't know, that's not a particularly high bar, but I think in general, you look at the depth of the roster, it's better. You look at the experience of the players coming in, there's a little bit more there. The upside is much higher than it was with a lot of the players that they started off last season with. So what that translates to vis-a-vis everybody else in the league, I couldn't begin to say, but I do think this is a better team than they started off last season with.
Well, I'm not going to play Homer here, and people do, and it's been done on this show. I didn't say anything, but when people tell me, I'm excited about Ramon Laureano. First of all, I love Ramon Laureano. Ramon Laureano is the kind of guy I would have loved to play with. He is hard-nosed. He plays the game like a football player. That's just not a cliche. It's real. When you saw him in the COVID year, go after the Houston Astros, there were no fans in the stands. This wasn't showboating. There was only cardboard cutouts. Ramon Laureano went after the Astros when no one's supposed to touch each other, get near each other. To hell with that. I mean, that's the kind of guy I want to play with. I love Ramon Laureano. But someone said, I'm excited about Ramon Laureano. Excited? I'm not excited. I'm worried because I need to know who is Ramon Laureano not on PEDs? Because last year, he came back from the suspension clean, did not play well. So I don't know if there's excitement in the air. I think there's a lot of question marks. Who really is Ramon Laureano as a player? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, this is a very big year for Ramon Laureano, which is, I think, partially why I'm optimistic about him, because I do think that fire that you talked about is something that really does drive him. And I think starting off a season where he missed the first part of it because he was serving the suspension and everything else that was going on with the team, I don't know if he was ever fully engaged in that frame of mind, the way that he would be. But the motivation here, I mean, this is a make or break year for his career, really. Like, is he the guy that I think 2 years ago you could have thought about maybe being someone that signs like an 8-year deal worth a lot of money? Or is he a guy who's going to bounce around in a million teams and sign 1-year contracts or minor league deals for a long time? And I think this season makes or breaks that for him. So whether that motivation's enough to get him across, whether he could stay healthy enough to be that for more than 120 games. That's the most he's ever played is 123 games in the season. You need more than that from a guy who's going to be the best player on your team. So there's a lot that's going to be going into that. But I do think that this motivation and the drive that he would want to prove that last year was an aberration, I think will help him.
Well, let's talk about a potential dilemma here for the A's, which is a great one to have. We know, ideally, Seth Brown playing right field. They'd like to see Seth Brown play right field. We thought DH, first base, right, but now with Aguilar here, in an ideal world, Aguilar's going to do a lot of the DHing. One of these kids, Garcia, Noda, somebody takes over first base. And then you have Seth Brown and right. What if Estuary Ruiz is everything the Padres have told us? Because the people with the Padres said this kid can be really legit. He's going to have to play, and he's a center fielder. So if I know Brown's going to play, and I know Ruiz is going to play in center, where does Ramon Laureano really fit in?
I mean, I don't see why Seth couldn't play left field. I know ideally he's been a right fielder. That's where he's sort of lined up, but he's played everywhere in the outfield. He's played a lot of center field. He's played left field. He's played right field. I've seen him all three places dating all the way back to Stockton. So I think that's the easiest solution. I think Laureano's arm is still a huge weapon to have out in right field. I think if you can keep him out of center field and keep the wear and tear off his legs, that's probably better for him anyway. So, it would take some adjustment for Seth to kind of see the diamond from that side of it, but it's not like he hasn't done it before, and I think he could handle left field.
Connor Capel, in a way, kind of remind me of Brian Giles, kind of that short, stocky guy. His bat stays through the zone a long time, a real level swing, makes a lot of contact, needs a place to play, didn't have it in St. Louis. Am I overly optimistic that I think Capel should be a guy getting a lot of at-bats, or should I pump the brakes?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. His track record in the minor leagues going into last year would not have made you think that this is a guy that you're going to want to give a ton of at-bats to. But he really did seem to change his approach quite a bit. The contact rate bumped up, the walk rate bumped up. And I think those are usually pretty good indicators of someone sort of figuring it out. He was a well-regarded talent in the Cleveland organization early in his career and just never quite got the numbers that you sort of would have, wanted to see at the levels that he was at. So, I think he's going to be someone that needs to prove it. But if he is the guy he was in September in that time that you saw, I think there's no reason why he shouldn't get a lot of it back.
Have you studied this Noda guy that we got in the Rule 5 from the Dodgers?
Yeah, I mean, he's interesting because he's a guy who not only is he a power hitter, which I think they really, obviously could use, and he's a guy who can get on base, but defensively, he's actually a very good first baseman. And I do think that was underrated in terms of what they were missing last year from Matt Olson. Like, it wasn't just the bat. I think the glove was very sorely missed at first base. They never really had anyone that was a plus defender there at any point last season. So if he's a guy who can come in and be an above average defensive first baseman, that certainly creates an alignment for a shift-free infield that will be, a pretty big bonus, especially if he can run into maybe 20 home runs in a year. That's a lot to ask a rookie, a Rule 5 pick. I think we have to wait and see, but I think that's the potential upside of someone like him.
I mean, the reality is the reason he's available is because they went out and got Freddie Freeman. I mean, that's no knock against Noda, right? I mean, Freddie Freeman is one of the best players in baseball. He was essentially, because we don't allow lefties to play in a lot of different spots, I mean, he was essentially blocked.
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers have probably a double 40-man roster, talk about depth, right? This is an organization that it could go 80 deep in a lot of ways. And so to be left off of the Dodgers 40-man roster is not a thing of shame.
Yeah.
You're not going to wear a scarlet letter because you were left off the Dodgers 40-man roster. So, people were around the Pacific Coast League were very impressed with him last year. I don't think it was just an aberration of playing in a lot of parks like Albuquerque and Vegas and Reno, where you're getting, that thin air. He had good numbers in Double-A as well. The A's have seen him a ton because the Dodgers and the A's are in a lot of the same leagues together in the minor leagues. So, they have a long book on him, and why not give it a try? If it doesn't work out by September, we'll see Tyler. So, I think that's sort of the way that they can approach it. But I think it's good to bring someone in who's a real first baseman because I think that was something that was sorely missed with the roster last year.
Well, you've covered this game for a long time. I mean, you know as well as anybody. Sometimes you think it's great to be in the Dodgers organization. Well, sometimes it's kind of a curse. You're blocked. I mean, you think about the run that the A's had in the 80s, bringing up all these rookies of the year. The Dodgers had that in the 90s where they had a bunch of rookies of the year. But, I mean, sometimes you get in one of these organizations and doesn't matter what you do. There's somebody playing at the big league level in your position, and you're not going to move that guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the Rule 5 draft exists. The Yankees used to be able to field like 3 big league rosters based on the guys they were hiding down there in the minor leagues. And, it got to where it was literally unfair because somebody would be sitting there and Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle and everybody else is ahead of them. And there's no, you could be Roger Maris and you're not going to get out there for a while, right? So absolutely. I think that's, that's part of why this exists. It's part of why the Dodgers have been so successful is that they can trade off and lose guys in the Rule 5 draft and really not feel it. And that's where I think every organization sort of strives to be.
You have never swayed away from believing in Tyler Soderstrom. You've always, every single time on, you have said it. I think he's a prodigy. He's been groomed to be this guy. We all remember his dad. I played against his dad in college. His dad went to Fresno State, was the number 1 pick by the Giants. He's been playing against his dad's been training all these kids in the Valley. Tyler's been playing against all of them. I mean, he's meant to do this, and you believe in it. Like, are we really going to wait till September? Or could this be a lot earlier?
Yeah, I think it depends on when he's ready, right? Like they're not going to base what they're doing on a timeline that's different than what's best for Tyler at this point, because ultimately they're not going to win the World Series this year. You're welcome to print that and make T-shirts of it if they do end up winning the World Series. But I think I'm pretty safe to say they're not going to win the World Series.
Did you just give us bulletin board material?
Go ahead, put it all the way up there.
We're against Melissa. She's against us. We're going to rally the troops in spring. We're going to have pictures of you all over spring training. She said we don't have a chance.
They're going to put it up in Georgia's clubhouse first, and then they're going to go into ours, So, but yeah, I mean, I think so. Tyler's going to start the year in AAA, and if he's hit 30 homers by July 1st, there's no reason why you wouldn't see him in July. He is still really young. He's only had 3 weeks of AAA time. There is value in getting, time at that level. I think there's also value in seeing if the improvements he continues to make at catcher would make him somebody who could play 25% of the games there, so that you kind of have an interesting way that you could play with the backup situation to Shea and have him play some first base and some catcher. So, there's reasons for him to be there, but when he's ready, they'll open the doors for him.
We've been through a lot of trades over a lot of years. But I got to tell you, when my phone buzzed and I just saw that Cole Irvin had been traded to Baltimore, because I've been trying to figure out, and you've done a piece about the rotation, I've been trying to put together a story here. Like, well, you get 30 starts out of Cole, close to 200 innings. Okay, you get this out of Blackburn. Okay, Waldichuk's growing up. Now we got Fuji in the mix. I like Sears. Like, you start putting this together, like we got something. And when I saw that, it like broke my heart. He's great for our show. He came on A's Cast Live all the time. We love him to death. Just how tough was that when you found out that Cole Irvin got shipped to Baltimore?
Yeah, I was having lunch with my mom, so I was definitely not in a frame of mind of a trade's coming and I'm going to focus on this. My feeling is entering a season without a guy that you can kind of hang your hat on, making 30 starts and not getting beat around the ears when he's out there is dangerous, in that sense. You want to have one guy that you can kind of count on like that. And it is hard to look at the group they have now and say that you can hang your hat on someone. From a talent perspective, was he probably among the top 5 most talented starters among the group they have? And Kyle Muller is another one you want to throw in there as well. But, maybe not, but he's proved it, and there's so much that hasn't been proven yet with the group that they've got. There's just a lot of pieces that are going to have to move together to, get to 162 games because you've got so many guys that haven't made 30 starts in the last couple of years. It is interesting. If they're going to be creative, I think it can work, right? Like if they're going to maybe go with a piggyback sort of situation where you have AJ Puck and Fuji, starting on the same day, where you're going to expect both guys to go 4 innings, or you're going to do some other creative things where some guys spend some time in the bullpen and then come back to the rotation and you have maybe 8 or 10 starters throughout a year, then it could work. But they haven't really done that or shown a willingness to do that kind of thing the way the Rays maybe have in recent years. So I'm a little skeptical that that's going to happen, but we'll see. I mean, they brought in a new bullpen pitching coach. They brought in some new infrastructure for the way that their pitching development is going. So even though they're not saying it, that could be an indication that there are some new ways of looking at how they're going to manage a rotation that this could, lead us towards.
Well, the title of your article, Oakland A's 2023 starting rotation outlook, can upside make up for lack of experience. As you said, lack of experience is scary because in the end, you have to get 162 starts. There's a ton of outs. We have it's 4,374 outs, not counting extra innings that you got to get during the year. So you need 4,374 outs. You need 162 starts. Where do you find that on this 40-man roster?
Yeah, I mean, looking at this right now, it's going to be a 10-man job, not a 5-man job. You look at like what Seattle did last year and basically used the same 5 starters. If you assume, Luis Castillo coming in and taking over that 5th starter spot was, a kind of a continuity thing, but you're not going to have that. There's zero chance of that. I mean, even if Puck and Fuji are as healthy as could possibly be, you don't imagine they're going to go more than 120 innings, I wouldn't think, just based on the workloads they've had the last couple of years. You're looking at Paul Blackburn and James Caprillion coming off of injuries. I mean, so if 10 guys can give them 120 solid innings, then, that's my math's not good, but you know what I'm saying? Like something like that's going to have to be the way it goes. And that is how the Rays manage their rotation. I mean, you look at, if you go on Baseball Reference, it's remarkable. They didn't have one guy go over 160 innings last year, and they had the best pitching staff arguably in the American League. But you have to be willing to live with that sort of like creative flow in and out sort of situation into a rotation and not be kind of married to the traditional 5-man setup. And I just don't know if they're able to do that yet. We'll see, I think.
Problem with the Rays, they're an outlier. They're not the norm. So, I mean, they've been able to do it, but trying to do it like them, I don't know. And I just, what's going on with Blackburn? I get Caprillion is never healthy. He's never been healthy since he left UCLA. Blackburn, this is not elbow. This is not shoulder. This was a finger. Everything's been pretty murky. So you have questions going in like, what's going on? Fingers get fixed. Why are we still worried about him injury-wise?
Yeah, I don't know if we're worried so much as, I think this is the second time he's had a finger thing. I think that rookie year didn't get interrupted by he broke a finger. I don't know if the two are related, so but there is a lot of feel that comes from, the ball coming off your fingertips. And if there was any lingering nerve issues or whatever, you could see that becoming an issue. I think the main thing is, do you believe that the Paul Blackburn we saw before the All-Star break, who, made the All-Star team, is Paul Blackburn, and that what we saw after that leading into landing on the injured list was because the finger was already bothering him? Or is it kind of headed back to a mean that is not going to be what we saw at the first part of the year? But yeah, I mean, if the finger's healthy and, he's back to kind of where he was at the start of last year, he's certainly capable of making 30 starts, and more capable than probably anyone else. Just looking at this, with the exception of these rookies, like, I mean, Waldachek, Sears, Muller, they've all been, relatively healthy and pitched a lot of innings lately. So they could do it. It's just a lot to ask a rookie to say, hey, you're going to lead us with 32 starts this year, right? So, but I think with Paul, the real question is just, there was such a divergence in how good he was at the beginning of the year and then how he struggled leading into that injury. What is the true him at this point?
Muller has a complete game last year in AAA.
Yeah, no, I mean, the future of the rotation is, Muller, Waldachek, and see what else kind of comes behind that. But, in an ideal world for the A's, those two are the guys that are giving them a ton of innings. And then you maybe add a Mason Miller in there next year, and you're looking at a rotation that they hope to see be more stable moving forward. I mean, I still think this is a pretty big transition year from them. They're trying to see where their parts are going to fit best. I think, making a decision before AJ Puck hits arbitration in terms of what value he brings to the team is probably a little bit why they're making a decision to give him a shot in the rotation. But there's a lot of talent there and a lot of pieces that they're hoping to have a better picture of going into next season when maybe they can start building towards a winner.
If you had to bet on it, who's taking the ball opening day?
That's a good question. Blackburn, if he's healthy, I think he earned it. He's your all-star, right? So, Cole was the guy I assumed would do it until that press release. So I think Paul's probably it.
It was like, what? How do you trade him? Let's end on this. I want you to give me a wild card. Who have you been studying? Who you think at some point could come up and get a lot of, could be at bats, could be a lot of innings. Give me a wild card from the minor leagues that could play not say a major role, but definitely play a role this year with the Oakland Athletics.
Yeah, I think Jordan Diaz. I mean, it's tough because they brought in these veterans that play his same positions, but man, he was really, really good last year. Really underrated as a hitter. I think he came up and more than held his own in his little stint in the big leagues, and he's been on fire this winter. And he's playing in the Caribbean World Series. He had a home run yesterday. And this guy can just really hit, and they don't have a lot of guys that can just really hit. And I think so if he's able to get hot, he's a guy you'll find a place for in the lineup because he can hit.
Great stuff as always, and everything on the Athletic is fantastic. We hope to see you. Are you going down to spring?
Not as of now. I'm not set to go there, no.
Well, then we'll see you at the Coliseum.
I will. I'll be at the Coliseum.
Well, we'll be checking in during spring training because nobody does it better than you. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on.